Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining us for our Monday weather update for January the 23rd, which is Wellington Anniversary Day. And for Wellington itself, mostly settled, but a slightly cooler southerly today means your daytime high will be down a few degrees on where it was yesterday. Most other places, no real change. A lot of high pressure about to move in and across the country over the next few days. But up in the tropics and sort of semi-tropics and down towards Australia, got a series of low pressure systems. Now this bigger one nearly became a tropical cyclone at the weekend over New Caledonia. It had wind shear, lots of high pressure down here, sort of cutting the system apart higher up in the atmosphere. So it never actually developed into a cyclone, but it got very, very close to it. In fact, the Americans said that it was a cyclone for a short time. So that system, no longer a storm, but it is going to fall apart. And unfortunately, it looks as though for the long weekend coming up, the Auckland one, which is half the country, 2 million people or so get that day off, this could be coming in at the same time that the high is leaving. And that means a squash zone. And for those of you who have been paying attention, we've had a few of those since spring, November, December, and actually at the start of January, we saw squash zone events affecting the top of the country. So we'll show you in a moment what that potentially means. It's not all bad news, but it's at the end of this week, a burst of wind and rain, and then over the long weekend starts to kind of slowly unwind. Squash zone events tend to take 2 or 3 days with the same kind of setup. When you get a storm, it zips through and you've got all sorts of different wind directions, but with a squash zone event, tends to be the same, usually a nor'easter, blowing for a few days. So you can see that nor'easter starting here on Tuesday. There is the low, here is the high. Mostly settled on Tuesday around New Zealand, but notice the blue around Waikato. That is a sign of afternoon downpours and thunderstorms that could really form anywhere around the North Island. Take a look at the maps on our website if you want to know where they're more likely to form. We've got the Met Service outlook and we've got our own thunderstorm risk zone. So worth taking a look at, and mostly settled around Australia, but a few thunderstorms for you through the inland areas. As we go through the middle of the week, Australia is surprisingly settled right across the entire continent. Little bit of rain up here in the very north. Around New Zealand, mostly settled as well and hot. We've got the northerly winds just drifting down. It's not overly windy at all, but that airflow keeps the temperatures up, and more afternoon downpours and thunderstorms on Wednesday. And again on Thursday, more so further down the island, and maybe 1 or 2 bubbling up around the mountains and ranges of the South Island. Otherwise, you'll notice here on Thursday that nor'easter starting to set in, and in comes the rain. So this is sort of a squash zone. It's the halfway mark between a high and a low, and you get that sort of all the isobars being sort of slowly squashed together. So when we get to the end of the week here Friday, you can really clearly see small area of low pressure that was almost a cyclone, no longer a storm at all now, and the big powerful high out to the east. So all these isobars sort of being squashed together, unfortunately in the area that's going to be having a long weekend. But here's the good news. It may not linger all weekend. So we'll go into Sunday for you, but this is Friday, and also down in the south, a separate system, a cold front coming through there with a very weak southerly and a little bit of rain coming in for you. And over in Sydney, just a couple of coastal showers. Over the weekend, the rain slides down into places where you may not want it. Now, take a look at the forecast we've got at Rural Weather and Weather Watch, because it shows you the percentage, the confidence of rain, and the total amount of rain. So if you've got 70% chance of 5 millimeters, that's probably a few showers or a little bit of patchy rain, but it's not a very wet day. 5 millimeters isn't much. So take a look at your forecast, see what is showing up. Not everywhere will have rain, but it will be a little bit windy just through this zone here. And then we get to Sunday, and the high pressure system out to New Zealand's east actually pushes back a little bit, and that then pushes some of that rain back to the north. So places like Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty start to see big, long, dry spells. And then, of course, we've got the Monday, and that improves a little bit further. But the nor'easters, that's what we talk about, the squash zone, they carry on. So it's going to be a little bit windy. It may not be too problematic, but it's worth keeping an eye on, especially if you're going out in a tent. You'll be noticing those winds even more than usual. Finally, as we end the month, no real storms up here in the tropics, so that's some good news. It's not going to be a stormy start to February, at least at this stage, but we certainly do have some unsettled weather coming in for the north of New Zealand for the long weekend. We'll have more details about that as we go through this week And we've got a news story about it on our website. So if it really matters to you, just go and read the news story on our website or our free app. That is all from me for today. Back again tomorrow, Tuesday, with our next update. See you then.